Most people hear the idea that plant material can produce electricity and immediately assume it's either exaggerated or impossible. Plants grow. Electricity powers homes. Those things feel unrelated, but the connection between them is more interesting than most people expect. Because plant material doesn't create electricity directly, it stores energy first. And understanding that difference changes the entire conversation. At the surface level, the idea sounds simple. Plants grow using sunlight. That material is collected. Energy comes out. But that explanation skips the most important part. Plants don't generate electricity. They store energy through biological processes. That energy can later be transformed. And transformation is where electricity enters the story. The process begins long before any electricity appears. Plants absorb sunlight. Through photosynthesis, they convert that sunlight into chemical energy. That energy becomes stored inside fibers, sugars, and organic structures. So when you look at plant material, you're looking at stored solar energy, not electricity. Stored potential. That distinction matters. Because electricity is not being created from nothing. It's being converted. And conversion changes everything. At first, this seems similar to other energy systems. Store energy, release energy, use energy. But plant-based systems introduce a completely different timeline. Unlike batteries that charge quickly, plants accumulate energy gradually. Days, weeks, months, sometimes longer. That means energy storage happens naturally before any technology becomes involved. And once the material exists, the next challenge appears. Accessing that stored energy. This is where people often become confused. Because having energy stored in plant material doesn't automatically mean usable electricity. A conversion process still has to happen. Combustion, biological decomposition, gasification, thermal conversion. Different systems release stored energy differently. And each method introduces conditions. Temperature, moisture, material consistency, timing. So electricity becomes less about the plant itself, and more about what happens after the plant. That hidden layer changes expectations. People often imagine plant electricity as immediate. Plant in, power out. But real systems behave differently. They transform stored energy step by step. And every step introduces limits. That's why two identical amounts of plant material may not produce identical results. Because energy conversion depends on conditions, not only quantity. And this creates an important perspective. Plant material behaves less like a battery, and more like delayed solar storage. Sunlight captured over time, released later. That idea explains why plant-based energy systems continue attracting attention. Not because plants are replacing electrical infrastructure, but because they offer another way to think about storage. Instead of storing electricity directly, store biological energy first, convert later. And that changes flexibility. Because energy doesn't always have to stay in electrical form to remain useful. But there's another layer. Plant-based electricity systems also introduce trade-offs. Collection, storage, conversion efficiency, process control. So again, the goal isn't simplicity, it's understanding behavior. And that leads to the key turning point. The real issue isn't whether plant material can produce electricity. It can under the right conversion processes. The real question is how efficiently stored biological energy can be transformed into usable electrical output. Once people understand that, the topic becomes much less mysterious, and much more practical. Plants stop looking like electricity generators, and start looking like natural energy storage systems. That shift changes how people think about energy itself, not as something that only comes from wires, but as something that can exist in different forms long before it becomes usable power. If you want to explore how plant-based energy systems are structured and how conversion processes work in practical scenarios, there's a structured breakdown in the description. You can also find a practical guide and step-by-step framework that explains how these systems are commonly understood. And as always, the goal isn't to make the concept sound futuristic. It's to make the process easier to understand.